Hi, this is Eric Durek, and welcome to this edition of Med Health Fit, the TV show that integrates wellness and healthcare. And tonight we're talking about one of my favorite topics, which is cancer survivorship. And tonight on the show we have MichelleKendall, who is a local Santa Barbaran. She is a cancer survivor, and she is also the producer and the star of a very interesting documentary called Schedule 1. And we're going to get into that in just a second. Welcome to the show, Michelle.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you're fighting ovarian cancer right now. What stage is it?
I'm metastatic. I was in Oxford at the time when I started feeling unwell. And like most ovarian cancer patients, I had very vague symptoms, and they were ignored for quite a while. So it took me 5 months to get properly diagnosed and to have my surgery. And it was staged 3C during surgery, which is where most ovarian cancer patients tend to get diagnosed. And then this is my third recurrence. So ovarian cancer tends to respond well to chemotherapy, but it just comes back because you've got this big cavern and the cells are just floating around and they're just hard to kill the last ones. So I don't like to think of it this way, but I would say that I'm stage 4 and it's metastasized. So I had 7 lymph nodes removed in May.
Mm-hmm. In general, how do you feel? I mean, in general,
I don't have a lot of pain, but my legs are really starting to ache from all of the chemo. So tomorrow is my 17th chemotherapy.
Oh my goodness.
I've had 3 full series of chemo, and so I have 2 left in this series. I'll be 18 by the end of October. So my legs and my feet are hurting a lot more, but aside from that, I'm doing okay.
Okay, great. Well, okay. I'm happy to hear that. Tell us a little bit about ovarian cancer. I'm sure that you probably have a lot of statistics now at the top of your head, like how many women get diagnosed every year, and kind of at what age?
It's very uncommon to have a diagnosis as young as I am. I was only 43 when I was diagnosed. I'm 46 now, and it's a fairly uncommon cancer. I'm BRCA negative. A lot of women that have
BRCA gene.
Yeah, a gene that's more commonly known to be tied to breast cancer, but also increases the risk of ovarian cancer. So because it's kind of a rare cancer and difficult to treat, the statistics aren't great. Most women who discover their disease at stage 3C will have a recurrence, and once you've had a recurrence, it's considered inevitably fatal. So women are living longer with it, but maybe 5-6 years.
Right, and I don't want to sound like a know-it-all, because I don't know everything about cancer. I had the what I consider to be a life-changing opportunity to work with cancer patients with the WellFit program for 2 years, and that really changed my perception of the application of exercise programs. Because I had a lady, her name was Karen. I'll always remember this woman. I put her on the bicycle her first day, and I said, "Okay, show me what you got." And she couldn't even move the pedals. So I said, "Well, let me take it from 100, watts, and I'll put it to 50," and she still couldn't move the pedals. And she was 30-some years old, so I put it to 25 watts, and she's barely. I said, "I'll tell you what, let's start at 0. And she's pedaling, and she goes, "Okay, that feels pretty good." And 38 seconds later, she goes, "I'm done."
Wow.
I'm like, 38 seconds. But I got to tell you, 10 weeks later, she was doing 15 minutes on the Versa climber.
Yeah, that's
she
great.
Really improved. So it was a life-changing thing for me, but I've also developed an attitude about cancer, because I have the opportunity to work with oncology people, same as what you're doing now, and also people in integrative and complementary, or what we call alternative medicine. And they gave me an entirely different mindset about cancer. And that's really one of the things that we're going to talk about here tonight, because you've chosen to use cannabis as part of your therapy. And I think what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you lift this guy up right here, and we're going to have you pointed at this camera 1 right here. And you're going to hold it straight up.
So during my remission,
And this starts in August 21st
Yep.
of last year.
This was last year during my remission, so I was on no anti-neoplastic
Perfect, just like
drugs.
that. So we're watching.
And so I was on a low dose of cannabis, and my numbers were pretty stable at 1 and 2 points increase every 3 weeks, because I get my markers checked in a blood test often. And then we call this the Galapagos experiment.
Where you went out of the country.
We went out of
and
the
did not have-
country and couldn't take my drops because they're illegal all around the world. And my marker shot up. And my oncologist was like, whoa, I don't know how to explain this. And I said, well, I think I do. So this is really when I got into researching pretty much nonstop for 6 months, because I knew it was real. So all of this Rick Simpson and these crazy corners of the internet that I really hadn't given very much credit to, because it seemed so
out there.
Yeah, out there. But so then I started different formulas. This was a high CBD formula that didn't do as much, but then a high THC formula brought my number down.
So you went from a very high number here, and then we look down here. This is almost cut in half.
Yep, and that was just on high THC. And so then I had surgery, and they removed the lymph nodes that were infected, and now I'm on chemo. So this is really the only data set that's
Which is
amazing,
good data. Most people don't have that kind
yeah.
of data.
And so I would suggest if anybody is interested in doing cannabis, if you can set up a protocol where you can see how it's
what
affecting
your blood draw numbers are.
Yeah.
And the number you're looking at is the CA-125
This is
cancer marker.
Yeah, this is CA-125, but each cancer patient would have their own different types of cancer.
And one of the things that we spoke about just briefly before we got on the air was that, when you were doing your research, you're not just looking at like I don't know, wholelifeexpo.com, type of things. It's fun. But you actually pulled up what you told me, what you felt was the quintessential research paper to date on cannabis. So it's from who? It's from Brian?
So if you go to Google Scholar and you're up for it, you can read all of the papers that are the real science papers. And because I'm a biologist and I am comfortable doing that, I think it's important. So this paper was published in June
of this year.
And I was Google stalking, as I like to say, this author. His name is David Mary, and this is a lab in Israel. And Israel has quite liberal policies about cannabis because the man who discovered THC is Israeli, Professor Meshulam. So this paper is called The Heterogeneity, which means the diversity and complexity of cannabis extracts as anti-tumor agents. And what I think is really important for people to understand is that cannabis has 500 compounds.
Right, and we're not going to show, I don't think they'll be able to see it on the air, but there's a wonderful graph in there that really shows all of the, just hold it up for a second.
The diversity
each one of
the
these
plant.
little tiny boxes is
a different cannabis plant, and this is showing the expression of different compounds. So you have cannabinoids, and you have terpenes, and then you have flavonoids, which all have different effects on the body, upregulating and downregulating different pathways. So when someone says, well, cannabis didn't work for my aunt, maybe she had a cannabis plant over here and it didn't have the right kind of compounds.
Right, or she may have the right plant but the wrong percentage.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
So it's very complicated, and then cancer's complicated. Cancer's really
very complicated.
100 different diseases, and like a woman with a BRCA ovarian cancer would even be getting a different treatment than I'm getting as a BRCA negative ovarian cancer. So I just want people, if they're thinking about trying this, to be cautious and also to really try to track their data so they can make good choices.
I think that tracking the data is a wonderful thing, because I think, as we spoke about on the phone, my friend who had advanced head and neck cancer did a very high dose THC compound for 5 months. And at the end of 5 months, he had regular markers, but he chose not to do any traditional oncology treatment because he didn't want to get his jaw cut off, and he didn't want to get his throat box taken out, and all the other things they said there. He thought that was just crazy. He said, "Why would I want to do that?"
Yeah, well, nobody wants to.
Nobody wants to, but what he did is he investigated, and he went up to Canada, and he met with this man Rick Simpson, who has the Simpson protocol. And Simpson has taken years of his life to sort of look at an investigation, not quite as, I don't think as
Yeah, he's not a scientist.
He's not a
Definitely
scientist.
not a scientist, but he's a good advocate.
But he is, and he's gotten people to sort of take the first step, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, he really did bring attention to it.
Right, he did. I mean, I
He
actually
did.
saw him on 60 Minutes or something.
Oh, I didn't know he'd been
60
in something.
But I saw him on TV. I saw him
Yeah.
on a national news program, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And then when I heard about him again through my friend, who, by the way, 10 years later is doing fine.
That's great.
And so I think that there's something to this. I've
Oh,
never been a marijuana guy myself,
Yeah.
even though I went to high school in the 70s. You know, I let my sister do all that stuff. Ginny, I didn't mean that. But anyway, but you know, I watched kids. You know, they would do marijuana, but they were doing it, you know, for recreational uses. Nobody thought about this as having any medicinal properties, and all of a sudden,
Yeah.
in 5 years,
Things have changed.
everything changed.
Yeah.
And
Well, I'm a very data-driven person, and the science is absolutely here. It doesn't mean it's a miracle, one-size-fits-all cure for cancer, because the
Right.
plant is complex and cancer is complex. But there is absolutely something to this, and I was cannabis naive when I started this. I had never taken cannabis, was absolutely uninterested, and now I have to take it every day. And
Right.
the other thing that's important for people who are thinking about going this route is that I'm learning from more and more of the clinicians that I've met with. I've met with a lot of clinicians that have the most experience that I can find in California dosing, and people are clearing themselves, putting themselves into remission, and they stop the treatment, and then it comes roaring back. So we're hearing more and more and more that you have to stay on a small maintenance dose.
which my friend does.
Yeah, and so I want people to really realize that
Right.
that you can bring it way back down,
Which is what he did.
but you have to stay on a tiny maintenance dose and continue to watch it.
Well, and he likes to smoke too. So
Yeah.
you know, so for him it's not so much a problem, but he still takes his. I'm going to call it the tar version, the black.
Yes.
thick
Mine's
or-
quite thick, but
Yeah.
not quite as thick as the RSO. A little.
Anyway, but,
Yeah.
but you know, so and also we're going to talk about your documentary here in just a second. But I actually found here in Santa Barbara that we have the Cannabis Research Center, and I just met the guy last week.
Oh, I don't know.
We
How
have a
can I not-
Cannabis Research Center here in
Wow.
Santa Barbara, and I've been in communication with the owner, and he's got tons of research papers on there. I think he himself is like a biology retired biology guy or something. So we'll get, you know, I can get some information about that at the end. But I think it's called Cannabis Research. CannabisResearchSB.com is the name of it.
Oh, I
and
didn't even know about
it's
that.
a high level. Probably has all those types of papers on there, and anyway, and I just think that, again, I think Santa Barbara has a tendency to sort of bring out sort of those types of people. The woman that was on my show here earlier has, I think, one of the top leadership companies in the world, and she's located here, and you can kind of go down the line, and here we are looking at this relatively new area of medicine.
Yes.
And now we have this research person, we have someone like you, and you may not think of yourself as this because you're sort of, you know, you're in the water trying to swim to the shore, but you are blazing a trail here because you know, my friend was not a data guy. He knew how much he was going to take, but it was sort of like, well, how am I doing today? Oh, and I'm going to get a blood test next month, so we'll figure it out. But it wasn't, you know, as important to him. I had to sort of to really pull some things out of him to you know, write up my little report on him. So but do you feel, I mean, your numbers are going down, but intuitively you feel like you're on the right path here?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I had that period during remission where I know that it shrank my tumor, and if I was the only one, I would be skeptical. But all of the
Yeah.
preclinical data backs it up. And speaking with Dr. Bonnie Goldstein and Dr. Goldstrich and Dr. Behrman out in Goleta and Dr. McElroy and, like, you know, all of these clinicians that I have sought out either in Skype consultations or in person, they all have stories of, you know, hundreds of patients that they've helped. So it doesn't help every type of cancer, but it absolutely is real.
And David Bierman is out in Goleta, because I remember reading something about him 20 years ago. Cannabis research, what's he doing over, you know?
Right.
He was pretty much all by himself.
Yeah.
And now we can look at him as a local trailblazer himself too.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about this documentary. One of the reasons you're on the show, I think probably the big reason you're on, is that you decided that you were going to produce, write, star, and
reluctantly star,
and fundraise for a documentary that you call Schedule 1. Now, tell us what Schedule 1 means.
Schedule 1 is the drug class that the FDA has that's the most restrictive. So cannabis is in Schedule 1, as is LSD. And to be in Schedule 1, the FDA claims, and the DEA, that there's no medicinal value and that it's a high potential for abuse. And the data really it says that neither of those things are true. We definitely know it has medicinal value. And in my own experience, I went off of the cannabis for 2 weeks before surgery because it can interfere with anesthesia. There's data coming out of Colorado. So I really wanted to make sure to get my system cleaned out before anesthesia in May. And I stopped and it was no problem. So for me, it's definitely not addictive. I would find chocolate more addictive. But anyway.
There you go.
So Schedule 1, and that's really the problem. People say to me, Michelle, well, it's not really illegal. You can go down the street and buy it, which is true. But my problem isn't access to the plant. It's that I need data. I'm basically just taking massive amounts of cannabis because I don't know what is killing the tumor.
Right.
And people who are trying to dose for serious medical issues need guidance.
Absolutely.
And it would be fabulous to have some science. And our government is telling us that this plant isn't even deserving. Not even, if you ask me if it should be recreational, I mean, that's not my fight. We just need some science.
Right.
Can we get it out of Schedule 1 and put it in Schedule 2 or Schedule 3? And so researchers.
Well, let's take a look. Let's take a look at your
studies.
trailer. I think you've got about a minute and a half or 2 minute trailer here that's going to give people some, hopefully, whet their appetite to go see it, because you're trying to get this movie into the Santa Barbara International Film Festival, which we'll talk about in more detail. So, Michael, let's roll the trailer, and this is called Schedule 1 with MichelleKendall, and we may have to wait here for a second till he gets.
My name is Michelle, and I have a crazy story to share. If I hadn't lived it myself, I probably wouldn't believe it. But I promise you it's all true. I have an incurable cancer, and I'm treating myself with a substance that's been banned around the world for 80 years. Maybe you've guessed. I'm treating my cancer with cannabis, and this is my story. After 4 years of conventional treatments, Western medicine can't offer me a cure. The average life expectancy after recurrence is 18 months, and I've surpassed that. By using only high-dose whole plant cannabis extracts, I shrank my tumor by 50%. Thankfully, because I live in California, I can use cannabis now, and I'm just going to have to do my own science because I think that I don't have time to wait for real clinical trials. I dove into the latest peer-reviewed journals to find the preclinical data abundant and clear. Cannabis has powerful and diverse anti-tumor properties. Having this information when I was first diagnosed would have made a huge difference in my treatment, giving me another tool to slow my tumor growth and extend my remission times. Why me? I asked that question a lot when I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and there wasn't a good answer for that. But why me to make a film about cannabis and cancer? Because I had never tried cannabis before my medical treatment, and I can be a spokesperson to normalize and medicalize cannabis while telling my story. I hired an experienced production company skilled at bringing compelling documentary stories to life. I want to produce a film that's both passionate and emotional and beautiful, but also gives enough science so that at the end you know that this is real. My hope is that this film will connect me to the cutting-edge cannabinoid research that can save my life. If you had asked me before I started cannabis, I would say my prognosis is very poor. But since I managed to shrink and control my tumor on cannabis alone, I'm hopeful that somehow I can figure out how to manage this disease and die a little old lady from some other ailment. Join me. With your contribution, we can break the stereotypes surrounding medical cannabis. The time has come for science, not prejudice and stigma, to drive medical policy. I ask for you to join me.
So Schedule 1, looks like it's going to be a fantastic documentary. It looks like it's well produced. You have a GoFundMe page that you are looking for funding. Not so much that you're looking for $100,000 so you can be cured per se. You're looking to get this into what I'll call the International Film Festival season. And Santa Barbara International Film Festival is in February, if I'm not...
It's in January this year. January 15th, I believe. It's earlier. And the deadline for submission is November 15th. So
you got about a month.
The filmmakers working really hard to get it ready. And we really hope that it's accepted, and then I'll shop it around to other film festivals.
You have to pay to get a movie in there.
Yes, we do. So I launched the GoFundMe page, and I've been overwhelmed with donations. And I'm really clear on the GoFundMe. It's not to pay my medical bills.
Right.
And thankfully we have decent insurance, although the cannabis can get expensive. But so it's really just to help with the costs of the film. So we've raised $21,000 in just 2 weeks.
Good for you, fantastic. That is, and is that going to cover the cost per se?
Mostly, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I had set the goal at $25,000, so that covers basically the filming costs, and then, you know, I mean, I'm committed to making the film.
Right. How much more filming and editing? A couple more weeks?
So we just have a little bit more filming and mainly just editing. And I would love to make it a longer film. So Michael and I have talked about, if funding came through, we would really love to continue the story, because this is a short. We're talking 15 to 20 minutes.
Right.
But I'd love to take the story to Israel and meet the researchers, or go protest at the DEA, go lobby Congress, and really try to take this story to the next level.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I this is fantastic. So I didn't know what your status was with this, but I'm just excited for you because, there's a. I'm an old movie fan, and there's an old Abbott and Costello movie, and in one of the scenes that the guy's going to try to hypnotize him to kill himself. And he looks at him, he goes, this doesn't work, and this doesn't work because it's Lou Costello, and he screws up everything. He goes, how do you want to die? You know, pick a way that you're going to die. And he looks at me, he's like, old age. And so I look at people, I say, I have a lot of friends who have cancer right now, and I want them all, they're going to go someday, but it's going to be old age. You're much too young to be leaving this earth right now, and I just think that if you were just doing a documentary, that kind of gets you going in one sense, because there's a lot of work to it, but you know that it's like writing a book. Once it's done, man, you've done something really great. But now you've got this THC cannabis formula that you may be at the forefront of actually being able to at least put people into protocols that may be these best fit models. And we don't have to have like 500 boxes. You may put them in 10 or 20 boxes, and then we can subdivide from there. But you could be doing medical science a huge favor, because you're already thinking about how that's
I try to think like a scientist. But yeah, what we really need is to have this plant descheduled, and to have our government recognize the value of it. And the reason I decided to do the film was that I felt like I was such a good spokesperson, that I had never tried cannabis before my diagnosis, that I have done everything that Western medicine has to offer, and I have a terminal diagnosis if I stick with the Western treatments. There are no cures for me. The fact that I'm so young, and the fact that I can speak to the science and try to say this is an absolutely valid option, and we need to take it seriously. Yeah. And so I just felt like I had to do it. I mean, how could I not? I wish that someone had done this, and I knew about this right from my from the day of my diagnosis. I could have had longer remission times, or maybe even only had one series of chemo and one surgery, and it would have made things a lot easier.
Yeah, the interesting thing about my friend is that when he decided he wasn't going to do the traditional oncology, the next week he was up in Canada. So he didn't really mess around. But my other friend Michael, who's got this advanced stomach cancer, his doctor misdiagnosed him for 6 months as well too, and there's a side of him that's kind of furious with it. Well, you've got a stomach upset, whatever, it'll be fine. And it never got fine. It got worse and worse. And he said, had he gotten a blood test or gotten something or whatever that would have taken him to the left as opposed to the right, he said, I would be in a different position right now. But the good news is that I am of the mindset that when someone says there's nothing we can do, it's like maybe there's nothing you can do, but there's probably somebody out there that can do something better. I'm not saying that everyone will get cured. I don't have that omnipotence, but I do know that this step here in this direction is huge for you. I mean, I just what I've read in the last. I'm a newbie at this as well. I have 3 months I've been reading, but I got 30 years of research reading behind me. I've read tens of thousands of research studies in my career, and I know what's a good study, and I also know what's not a good study. And the things that I've seen so far here are almost
amazing,
earth-shattering to me.
They are. Dr. Mieri's lab in Israel, the cannabinoid and cancer biology research lab, is doing amazing work, and it's not just about cancer. The reason I want to, if we have time, to get into really quickly the fact that every vertebrate animal has an endocannabinoid system composed of CB1 and CB2 receptors, and we make anandamide, which is a molecule, and 2-AG. So we make these molecules and they work on those receptors. And that's what the cannabis extract compounds are working on.
Right.
So it's working on a system that
synergistic
we have.
system that we already have, as opposed to smoking cigarettes or taking more, taking a medicine which is a synthetic derivative that's not really synergistic with anything.
Yeah, but it's designed to work with our receptors, and that's why it can help with autism and PTSD and skin issues and fibromyalgia and MS. So when I feel like the fact that people claim that cannabis can help so many things actually kind of is a detriment to the plant's reputation, because it seems too good to be true. Right. And if you don't understand the endocannabinoid system, it all just sounds like snake oil.
I think that we've taken it away over 100 years. We've taken away that ability of the system to work. Yeah. Like that I think certain drugs we're taking now are taking away our immune system ability to work. And I think we got everything in here.
Okay.
Your ScheduleOneMovie.com is up on the screen.
Great.
And MichelleKendall, producer, fundraiser, and star of this documentary, Schedule One. I wish you all of the best, because I think that you are medically onto something here that is going to be groundbreaking. And you bet I'll be in the first row when your movie comes out at Santa Barbara Film Festival.
I really hope
and
so.
Hopefully we can have you back on, in a year when you're really healthy.
When I'm still in remission.
When you're still in remission.
And I have defied the odds.
Fantastic.
Then we'll do it.
Okay, so for MichelleKendall and ScheduleOne.com, this is Eric Durack for Med Health Fit. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me.